Hey there, everybody. Don here from Watchreport.com. And today I have the Vaer D7 Atlantic. But let's go ahead and give you some background information on Vaer watches. They started in 2017. You know how the story goes: two guys, a rabbit, and a bottle of brandy. No, wait a minute, that's a different type of story. But anyway, two guys that are friends and watch enthusiasts got together in 2017 and started this company. And what they are known for, at least up until now, is very affordable field watches that are assembled here in the United States. So American assembly, very affordable. Now, when I say very affordable, we're talking field watches that start at $199, have quartz movements, sapphire crystals, really good deal and value. But flash forward to 2020, and last year they did a pre-order on their dive series. There is the D5 and there is the D7. Now the D7 series is Swiss made. The D5 series is American assembled. And we'll get into all that here in the video. And as you can see in the title, the biggest question here is, should you be buying the American assembled version, or what I consider to be somewhat strange, the Swiss-made version? Should you be buying the Swiss-made version? So let me go ahead and give you all the specifications of this piece and the pricing. So as I said, you're looking at two different versions, but out of those two different versions, everything is going to be the same except for the movement and the place of assembly. Now, of course, the Swiss-made version is stamped on the dial Swiss-made, but I really don't consider that to be a difference. You're looking at place of assembly and the movement as being the difference. Everything else, the case, the dial, the bezels, the lume, everything that is used is exactly the same. And I think that is where it gets a little bit strange, because you're looking, when it comes to the American assembled piece, at a price starting at, on the Tropic rubber strap, of $499. That gets a Miyota 9015. But then when you jump to the Swiss-made piece, you're looking at $799. That's on the rubber as well. Now, if you want the bracelet, as you see here in the video, this oyster bracelet is an extra $100, no matter which variation you are buying. So, of course, that now brings it up to $899. Now, if you go on the Vaer website, you could see one of those little pop-up spinning wheels comes up. You enter your email address, and you can get a discount code. The most I saw was 15%, so I believe that is the most off that you can get. So, of course, that'll bring the price down a little bit if that pop-up wheel comes up and is still available at the time you go over after watching this. So, all the specifications are a 39 millimeter case, 40 millimeter bezel. It's all stainless steel. You do have a ceramic bezel insert with a 120 click unidirectional rotating bezel. You, of course, have a screw down crown. It is 13.7 millimeters thick with a domed sapphire crystal. This is a double domed sapphire crystal. 48 millimeter lug to lug, 20 millimeter lug width. All of them are using X1 C1 Superluminova. This one, as I said, has the ETA 2824 automatic movement. 144 grams on the bracelet, and depending on which version you're looking at pencil or broadsword style hands. Now, when you go ahead and you look at the design, obviously you can see where they got their design inspiration from. It's kind of like a mashup of, a Rolex Mill Sub and, an Omega Seamaster 300. As you can see, you have those Lear or Lyre, depends on how you want to pronounce that. I just like to say twisted lugs that they take from Omega. And overall, I like the design. Obviously, companies are still doing this design, and that's something you have to think about. There's so many micro brands these days and so many different ways to purchase, watches like this now. And yet companies are still going ahead and producing watches that look like this. And let's be real, this is a relatively, I don't want to say generic, that's the wrong word, but we've seen this design time and time and time again. But it's timeless, it's classic, and that's why brands keep doing it, because it's a design that's popular and people still in 2021 want this design. And with that, like I said, you get this nice mashup of design. I like the look of this watch. I like the design of this watch. I also like the very clean dial, very minimal text. You have the 6 o'clock date position, which is my absolute favorite. You do have a screw down crown, of course, the unidirectional bezel, 200 meters water resistant. Now you do have the bracelet on here, oyster style bracelet, and I'm going to talk about that here more in a minute. Now, one of the things I definitely want to make sure that I point out is the bezel. And the reason I want to make sure I point that out is because, well, there's kind of an issue, at least with my bezel, but now I'm not so sure if it's an issue or it was intended to be that way. Either way, it ends up being an issue, at least for me. So at first I thought that the bezel had some play in it. And then the more I played with the bezel, I realized that's not it. It's actually very functional, very sturdy, nice clicks, no issues whatsoever. So then I'm looking at it and I'm going, well, I think the bezel insert was just placed a little too far off to the left, and that's why it's not lining up with the markers on the dial. But then I started spinning it around and I started looking at it more and more, and I realized, no, it's only the triangle and the 30 marker that seem to have this problem. They're ever so slightly off center, but then when you look at where they do line up, it seems that they lined them up with the edges of the triangle and the 0 of the 30 as opposed to lining it up in the middle. Now, at least in my opinion, it's very noticeable. And again, I don't know, maybe it's just my example. I haven't seen, 10 or 20 of these in person. I could only go on what was sent to me. But it is something that I notice, and it is, I don't want to call it OCD because I really don't have that, but it is something that is very visibly noticed to me and I wish wasn't there. When you take a walk around the side of the case here and the case back, obviously you have an exhibition case back that does have a sapphire crystal as well. Nothing real of note here. The finishing on the case and the bezel and the crown and everything is pretty good. I have no issues with the crown or bezel action whatsoever. When you do get to the bracelet, if you opt for the bracelet, and as I said, that is an extra $100 charge. I think my issue is with the bracelet. One, it's just very plain. I don't feel the finishing of the bracelet matches the case whatsoever. It doesn't have any dive extension on it or anything like that. It is friction pins instead of screws in the bracelet, so there's that as well. And if this bracelet came at the $799 price point when you're talking about this at a 2824 Swiss made version, then I'd probably be okay with it. But the fact that it's still a rubber strap and you have to spend an extra $100 to get this bracelet, that to me is a letdown and where the disappointment really comes in. I just don't see spending that extra $100 for this bracelet. I don't feel it's worth it. And that brings us to the price overall and to the point of why are you a company that's based in the United States, you're based in America. Now, of course, these watches are being produced overseas in Asia, etc. Whether it's the Swiss model or not, we know then they're being sent over to Switzerland for the movement assembly and the whole watch assembly, and then they're being shipped back, and that way they're able to be Swiss made. But why are you a company that has built your reputation up on American assembly and building these watches here in America, and then you go and create a Swiss version as well? I can understand if you wanted to use Swiss movements, but then they're still assembled here in America. Why you had to go the Swiss made route is a little weird. And I'm trying to remember any other brand that I can think of that's done that over the years that you have. Here's one that's $499. It's the same watch, but it's assembled here in America. And here's one, or assembled wherever. Doesn't matter actually where the assembly is taking place at that point. I'm just talking in the terms of two different places to assemble it and then the price difference. And then here's one that starts at $799 and it was assembled, in Switzerland in this case. It's a strange dynamic here. I don't think I've ever come across this. And looking at it, in my opinion, and looking at, the Miyota version and the Swiss Edo version here, if you are somebody that just absolutely has to have a Swiss movement, then I understand. You're going to be paying it for it, though. You're going to be paying $300 extra to get that Swiss made name on the dial. Nothing else about this watch has changed. Now, as I said, it does have C1, X1, C1 Super Luminova. It's very good. It lasts very nicely. You could see it sped up here on the screen. No issues with the lume, but I started thinking to myself, what would make this Swiss version, a little more palatable at the price? And that would be, one, you have to upgrade the bracelet from the other version. I don't think they should be the same when you're charging this much of a premium. Maybe if you used X1C3 Superluminova on these, you know, maybe a different style case back or different dials completely. I think that would be, you know, okay, a good justification of that $300 extra. As it is, I just think if you don't care about having the Swiss movement and you're okay with a Miyota 9015, and by the way, I've always talked about, I love the Miyota 9015. I don't have an issue with it, as some people do. You know, $500 versus $800. I just don't see spending that extra money for the Swiss version. But I want to know from you, what do you guys think? You got a 4K video look at it here. I you know, gave you the spin around test here with the watch. What do you think of this piece? Do you think it's worth it at $799 because you're getting that Swiss movement, or would you rather do $499 for the Miyota 9015 and assembled here in America? Now, as it's gone through the video, as usual, you saw it on my wrist. I have a 7.5-inch wrist if you are new here. And I find the watch to be fairly comfortable. I like the size, the look. I have no problems with the look, and the look is very familiar. As I said, that vintage style mashup design. Both the strap and the bracelet have quick change pins. Not my favorite, especially when it comes to a bracelet. I just don't like quick change pins, at least the way these are done with the little lever bars on the back. But that seems to be the way brands are going these days with bracelets and straps. Everything is these quick release pins. But overall, I think it's a good watch. I just think I'd like it much better at that $499/$599 price point than $799 and $899. I personally just don't see the value because nothing else has changed besides that movement in these watches. But if you do want to see more about these, of course, in the link in the description, you can go over to watchreport.com and read my full written review, as well as a link to the Vaer website as well. As always, if you have any questions, leave them down in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you on the next one.